Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome to the ultimate Lost World. In this series, we're going to build a complete movie-accurate version of Isla Sorna, including everything you see in the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3. Let's go. We're going to start by creating Isla Sorna from scratch using the island generator, going through many different random islands until we get one that looks like Isla Sorna, and there it is. And then we'll be adding in more beaches, more water, and less mountains until we get something as close as possible to the island that we want, and then we can go in and start customizing it with the terrain tools. In this first episode, we're going to lay out the entire island, create the iconic beach from the opening scene of the film, and build the entire worker village from one of the main sequences in the film, along with the long grass that lies next to it. This here is going to be our beach, so we're going to get some slopes in here to make sure the animals can get down here, because the climax of this series is going to be turning this island into an actual functioning ecosystem. There's a river network that runs throughout the whole island, so we're going to place this in and make sure it all makes sense and ends at the beach with the water flowing in the right direction, etc. Get a load of waterfalls in. We know the island is more mountainous around the edges than it is in the center, so we'll raise the edges all the way around it. And that is the basic landscaping for the island done. Let's take a look at what we're going to be building. We've got a lot of building to do. I'm basing the locations of each of these areas on the Jurassic Park legacy map of Isla Sorna, which is about as accurate as we can get, and we're starting with the beach. This is where the Lost World film begins and where the Jurassic Park novel begins, and it's probably the simplest thing that we're going to be building in the entire series. We've already got some sun loungers and parasols and things like that. All we need to make is the little fold-out table with the bucket of wine on it that the English family have when they're on the beach. So we're going to make that with some of the pieces from the new wetlands pack. This is one of the wetlands signs, just spun upside down so you can't see the writing, and then we've shrunk it down to make a little tabletop here. We'd add a bucket. No wine bottles in the game, so a bucket on its own will have to do. A little rope for a candle. And that's the kind of picnic done. We can move on to landscaping. So I noticed as the little girl walks from where her family are to where she encounters the Compys, she goes past some sort of evergreen tree, and there's loads of seaweed lying around on the beach as well. So we'll place all that in, and then we'll make a little forested area where our Compys are going to live, just using a mixture of some of the terrain brushes and then placing some individual ferns and things like that. This part of the beach opens out and gives a bit of a view into the interior of the island. You can see a big hill or mountain in the background. So frustrating that you can't just paint trees onto mountains in JWE3. So we'll put our own trees up here, just using some shrunken down kapok trees to get it all nicely covered. And that's the beach done. This is where the Compys are going to live. We're going to have a few little nests in there for them. And then this is the whole thing. Really does look like the perfect spot for a picnic. Just make sure you keep an eye on any of your kids. Now we're going to lay out the last few spots on the island to make sure we get our geography right. And then we'll move on to building the worker village. So we've got the trailers in, or stand-ins for the trailers anyway. We'll be building those properly next week. We'll put the rest of the river system in, including the shallower spot where they see the Stegosaurus. So we'll put a little Stegosaurus family statue in there as a placeholder. And then in one final bit of river, we'll add in a temporary aviary for the scenes in Jurassic Park 3. This, I think, will be one of my favourite parts of the island. With that all done, it's time to start building the worker village. In contrast to the beach, this might be the most complex thing that we build in this series. There is a lot going on in here. We've got fences and broken fences forming a compound. Then inside it, there's towers, staff buildings, giant, really cool looking administration building, a gas station, and all sorts of broken vehicles and things like that. This took a long time to build, and you might notice we're not actually on the island that we just created here. This is the basic Isla Sorna map in the game, because I actually started building this before the new update came out. The island generator wasn't as powerful as it is now, and I knew we needed the new options for beaches, etc. to get that working properly. So I started building it on this map. We'll get about halfway through, and then we're going to transfer all of it across to our new map and get it finished. The first thing we're building is the broken fence that allows the raptors to get into this area. We're using the wire generator pieces here to create a top piece of wire that's kind of hanging down, no longer electrified, using the shortest wire piece and then curving it manually so we can make it look like it's sagging down. And then we're using some of the other pieces to create wires that have fallen down completely. I've created a custom concrete base just to match how it looks in the film a bit better than the ones in the game. We're going to put some vehicles down to get us a rough layout for the area, although we'll be getting the layout exact before it is finished. And we'll also do some work on the vehicles just to make them look a bit more beat up with some decals and a broken windscreen and things like that. and then we'll finish off the gate at the front of the area. There's a big InGen sign above the gate, so we're going to create that now. I really wanted to use this piece as the backdrop for it because the texture's really good, but I realized after placing it's not FlexiColor, so we'll cover this up with various other pieces to give us the effect that we're looking for in a second. We're going to put the InGen name on here. There should be some text underneath as well saying "we build your future" or words to that effect, but I can't get the text small enough to do that, so we'll just leave it as the words InGen. We're going to use the backs of some windows to create a border for the sign. They are the right size and texture for what we need, and we can get those to the right color as well. So we'll build up the edges of the sign and join it seamlessly onto the gate using those. And later on we'll put some decals on it, but this is what it's looking like at the moment. Pretty happy with that. And now we'll create the pipe work that runs from outside the complex into it and is presumably how the geothermal power gets in here. We've pretty much got the exact pieces that we need to create these, so this is nice and simple. We just need to get everything in the right place, and then we'll cover it all in vines and plants and cracks and things to make them look like they're being reclaimed by the jungle. There's also the boneyard at the start of the pipework, which we'll build later. That's really cool. But we basically just need to build one of these. It's a repeating pattern, so we'll just make sure we get one absolutely perfect. And once we've got one that we're happy with, we'll start attaching them together. Looks like some kind of autoerotic sequence as we put it together. But we'll just run these inside the compound, and then we'll use some of the water towers to finish off this little kind of power area on the inside of the compound. Absolutely loving the new scaling tool, so we can just use these one piece and have 3 of these of different sizes. Makes things so much easier. And then we'll cover them all in ivy and cracks and things like that. And because we've got the air conditioning units as part of the build, there's actually steam coming out of it as well, which is useful seeing as this is supposed to be geothermal power. We're almost done with this entrance area now. We just need to break this wall up, get some of these kind of destroyed concrete pieces in here so we can start getting rid of this bit of wall in a way that looks natural. We'll get these to the right color and use a few of these where it's broken up. And there we go. Starting to look good now. Let's move on to the buildings. So the first building that we're going to tackle is the wooden tower to the left of the gate as you come in. So just using a few doors here to get the scale correct, and then we'll start building it out of the wood pieces and some of the girder pieces. I mentioned the wetlands pack earlier, and that came at exactly the right time for this build. That's actually why I took an extra week before I started this series. I knew all those janky wood pieces in the pack would be absolutely perfect for creating these buildings. So just using one of the base game wall textures for this initially, and then later on it'll all get covered up in the new wood pieces. And then we'll turn our attention to the roof. So we're going to build this using some of the lovely, very clean looking corrugated roofs in the base game. And again, later we'll replace this with all the rusty, falling to pieces corrugated roofs from the wetlands pack. And we'll build the little tower that sits on top of the roof as well. Put a load of decals on it, just to start getting that weathered kind of feel that we want. And we'll put some trim in, vital for making your buildings look realistic. We'll take a look at the finished, for now, tower. And then we're going to move on to the largest and most impressive building in the whole compound, the operations center. This is a really cool building. You don't get to see too much of it in the film because all the scenes that it features in take place at night, and they're action scenes, so cameras going all over the place, but it is really cool. Hard to find references of, but I managed to find a couple of production photos taken during the day where you can see it much clearer than you can in the film, so we should be able to get this pretty accurate. This is kind of the nerve center of Isla Sorna, and it went through quite a lot of changes during the making of the film as well. In all the concept art, it sits in front of a giant waterfall coming down a cliff, which feeds into a lake, which is where the building is set, which is why it has this big extended staircase at the front to get you over the lake and into the building. And then on the opposite side of it are more cliffs where the long grass lies. However, while they were actually filming, Steven Spielberg decided to bring the dinosaurs on the mainland idea, which he had for the third film, forward into the climax of the second film. And with the climax of the film now taking place in San Diego, they didn't want to spend as much money on the worker village set. So the giant waterfall and lake was replaced just by a kind of pool of water that the building sits in, and the cliffs at both sides were removed. There was originally going to be a scene where the characters escape from the raptors by hang gliding off of the cliffs after the long grass, because they somehow had hang gliders, but that was removed as well, although they ended up kind of using it in Jurassic Park 3. So that's the lore out of the way. Let's talk about the build. So we're using loads of the different concrete pieces here, along with some of the fence pieces as well, and just making the shape of the building. It's got a lot of different levels to it. Starts off on the ground, then it takes you up a bit over the water. There's a ground floor, which is kind of like a balcony running all the way around, and then another floor where the main entrance is. We'll run a load of these pieces along here to act as windows, and we'll take a look at how it's shaping up. Nice. It's floating in midair though, so let's get some supports in. So it's actually attached to the ground. We'll place these in on the top part because that's easier, and then we can just sink them down to meet with the ground there. And then we'll move on to the front door. So we've got one of the classic egg doors on the front here. You can see that in the film. And then we'll fill around this with some of these window pieces. Still really enjoying how we can choose what backdrop you can see through these. And we'll pick one of those in a second. We're going to put some slanting walls in front of it with some security lights on them. And then we will fill the rest of the windows in with the non-see-through glass pieces because we are not building interiors on this island. Otherwise this series will be about a year long. And there we go. That's as far as we're taking this on the default map. It's time to move this over to our beautiful new island. As you can see, I initially built the massive waterfall, but I decided, seeing as we're making everything match the films, probably shouldn't be there. So we'll get rid of that later. What we're going to do now is place in all the items that we've built so far: the tower, the fences, the broken piece of fence, the pipework, and the entrance, complete with some new decals to make it look more weathered. And then we're going to extend the pipework out and start putting in the boneyard. This is such an atmospheric little spot in the film. We're going to take some of the apatosaur bones, I think they're apatosaur bones anyway, size them up as big as they will go, place them around here, and then scatter loads of other bones around here. I've got the whole sauropod skeleton hidden away in there somewhere with just his head and a few vertebrae poking out, which looks really good. And we'll cover it all in some of the arid grassland to match the terrain seen in the film. And then we'll do a bit of terrain work inside the compound to get that kind of muddy look that it has. And then we're going to place some of the new cypress swamp just around the outskirts of the compound. I'll cover up the cypress trees, but this allows us to have mist just drifting in that looks really good. Next up, we're going to finish the operations center. So we've got these projections coming out of the roof and forward over the front door. And then we've got a kind of cage with what looks like an observation tower on the roof of the building. So we're going to build that using just this one metal piece really. We'll arrange this so it curves upwards from the roof into this pole here. And then we'll duplicate it, spin it around and copy it, and then we can use the circle trick to start building the kind of cage thing that we see here. And once we've got these vertical struts in, we'll do the same thing again to get a series of horizontal bars going around it. And then we'll use a couple of the cage pieces to make the observation tower or whatever it is that sits on top of the building. Again, we'll rotate these into place. Use some simple asphalt pieces to create the base of it, and then we'll add some metal supports in as well. Add some communications aerials and things like that to the roof of it, recolor a few things, and that's that done. We finalised the shape of these projections now, so we're just going to cover them in rust and dirt to start filling it in with the dilapidated look of the rest of the area, and then we're going to start covering it all in foliage. So we're using some of the bushes upside down here to get them to drape over the edges, and then we'll put one the right way up in the centre of it. Gets a really realistic look of some vegetation that's been growing through the concrete and spilling over the sides. We're going to put quite a few of these in, and some ivy as well, and a few other shrubs. All we need to do now is add a helipad onto the roof. These are the decals from the arrival point helipad. We'll get rid of that waterfall and then take a look at our finished operations building. I've made it so that some of the fences are falling down, and I've added loads of the puddle decals as well, just to further sell that abandoned kind of look. Time for the next building. There's a wooden building in between the tower and the operations centre, which is apparently where the workers on site actually lived. This is really dilapidated. It looked like it was pretty much just a shack on a couple of levels when it was built, and obviously time has not been kind to it. So we're just going to build pretty much a box really with the wooden walls from the wetlands pack, and then delete bits of it and replace them with some of the broken wood pieces, so it looks like bits of the building are falling down. There's a staircase up to a porch on the first level, and that's kind of repeated on the second level as well. We'll make a roof with these gorgeous new rusty corrugated iron pieces, and that's pretty much it. That's the building done. We're going to move on to the final building now. You see the most in the film, the gas station. This is where most of Malcolm's action with the raptors takes place in the film. It was quite tricky to build. It's pretty small, and the front of the building is almost entirely made of glass, which gets smashed during the film. So we need to build an interior for the front part of this. But it got much easier once I discovered the glass roof pieces. I didn't actually realise that we had these in the game. I thought the glass pieces in the game were pretty much all not actually transparent, but these roof pieces are off the grid, so we can use those as windows or whatever we like really. So they'll do a great job of putting in a window on the left side of the building, and we can use a little bit of them to make the windows above the door as well. Leaning heavily again on the wetlands pack wooden pieces, and then for the interior we'll use some of the powder panels, I think they're called, to create walls. Get some interest in there with some props like the electrical pipes and the little computer from the Badlands set. We'll put a lighting up here. I want this whole park to be completely accessible at night. We're going to see a lot of it at night in the end cinematics and throughout the series. We'll add some supports to this awning here with these metal pieces. We'll put some of these amazing new rubbish decals everywhere. These are so good. Our first 3D decals, really useful. And then we'll try and make some petrol pumps. These were pretty tricky because I'm still in the stage of learning what each of the pieces in Jurassic World Evolution 3 is. Don't know them off by heart like in Planet Zoo. So it's just a matter of going through all the pieces, mainly in the props panel, and trying to find anything that might work as a piece of a petrol pump. Cooling systems, some electrical cabinets. One of the air conditioning units has got a pipe coming out the side, which is useful. Finding something that looks like a handle for the pump itself. And I think it looks pretty decent when it's done. We'll just copy it across here. And that means the workers' village is complete. A lot of building, but well worth it, I think, once we see it with the boneyard and the geothermal pipes in front of it. And then inside the compound, I've covered all of it in random piles of rubbish, bits of corrugated iron and boxes, upside down ATVs, just a real mess like it is in the film. And with that complete, we can move on to the final thing that we're going to build in this episode, the field of long grass, where most of the people in the film meet their end. In order to make this, I did loads of experiments on which foliage in the game would deform as the dinosaurs run through them, so we can get that shot of the raptors streaking through the grass. And the best pieces I found that look like long grass and do that are the common reeds. So we're going to take loads of the 1 meter common reeds and loads of the 4 meter common reeds and create a massive field of them, and then we'll surround it with foliage, and this will run down to the workers' village. Once it's done, it looks really good, swaying in the breeze there. And before we see it in action, we're just going to drop in some nests for the Compys on the beach and the raptors in the workers' village, so we can get some dinosaurs in and take a look at them. It's just a beautiful day on the beach for our Compys, just hopping about without a care in the world. But as we move on into the afternoon, it's hunting time for the raptors. I love that long grass works so well. Really looks like they're shot in the film. We have a Parasaurolophus as well. All these dinosaurs are basically just placed here to do these cinematics, because I don't want them dying of old age before the park's finished. In the final episode, we're going to fill the park with all the dinosaurs that lived here and get a functioning ecosystem going. We'll take a look at the worker village at night, which is how we see it in the film. Got raptors stalking around past the petrol station. I would not want to be here at night myself. Next week, we're going to build everything else in the Lost World, including the harvester camp, the trailers, the high hide, the game trail, and the Rex nest. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.